Most people have heard of Lake Lanier. You've seen the headlines, the drownings, the accidents, the ghost stories. People say it's cursed, haunted. But what if I told you that the lake is only half the story? Because buried underneath this water is a truth that was never meant to be uncovered. It's a town, a community, people. This is the story of Oscarville, Georgia, and the tragedy that still haunts these waters. Oscarville was a small but thriving black community in Forsyth County. Families built homes, ran farms, started businesses, and worshiped in churches they built by hand. Some families owned dozens of acres of land they worked hard to keep in a country that never truly protected them. This was the kind of progress that made white supremacy uncomfortable. And in 1912, it only took one spark to burn it all down. A young white woman named May Crow was found beaten and unconscious in the woods. She later died from her injuries. With no investigation, no evidence, and no real defense, the blame immediately fell on three young black men: Ernest Knox, 16, Oscar Daniel, 17, and Rob Edwards, 24. They were arrested quickly and labeled guilty by the press before ever standing trial. Rob Edwards never made it that far. Before sunrise, a mob of white men stormed the jail, dragged him out, beat him relentlessly, tied him to a pole, and they took turns shooting him before hanging his body in the public square. His death was a warning to every black person in Forsyth: leave or face the same fate. As for Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel, they were tried in a courthouse surrounded by hundreds of angry white men. The trial lasted just a few hours. They were convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to death. Both of them were publicly hanged in front of 5,000 spectators, some of whom brought their children to watch. There were no appeals, no question, just bloodthirsty justice. Then came the night riders, white men riding through black neighborhoods after dark, armed and masked, banging on doors, setting homes on fire, firing guns in the air. They gave black families 24 hours to leave, and if they didn't, they were beaten, burned, killed. Can you imagine how scared those people had to be? The children had to witness this as well. Over 1,000 black residents were forced to flee Forsyth County. They left behind their homes, their land, their churches, and their family cemeteries. You see, many people look at this story and say, oh, I wouldn't have did that, or they would have did that. But you have to understand that this is a different time we were living in. Black people were powerless. Surprisingly, or should I say not surprisingly, there are little to no records that black people ever owned any property inside of Forsyth County. In fact, you won't see many details of anything before 1912. These people were driven out with no records of them even existing. That's not just violence, that's theft. Forsyth County became a white-only county for nearly 75 years. Black people knew they weren't welcome, and many were too afraid to even pass through. And the stolen land, it stayed in white hands. No restitution, no apologies, just silence. In the 1950s, the U.S. Corps of Engineers built the Beaufort Dam and created Lake Lanier. To do it, they flooded over 50,000 acres of land, including where Oscarville once stood. Entire towns, buildings, churches, and even cemeteries were left behind, submerged in water. No proper removals, no compensation to the descendants, just water. And today, people boat, swim, and vacation over a town that was buried twice, once by hate and once by water. Today, Forsyth County is the richest county in Georgia. Generational wealth built partly on land that was stolen from black families who were run out of town. Families who never got their land back, never got their names back in the records, never got justice. And then there's the lake. Lake Lanier has seen hundreds of deaths and mysterious drownings. Locals say it feels strange, heavy, off. Some call it cursed, some say it's haunted. But maybe it's just the weight of a truth that refuses to stay buried. They say Oscarville was never really a black town. They say no one was flooded out, and they say that it's all a myth. They say the land was empty before the waters came. But here's what we know. Black folks were forced out of Forsyth County. Oscarville may not have been all black, but it was a place where black families lived, worked, and built something real. And when they ran our people out with violence, threats, and fire, what came next was silence, and then water. They buried Oscarville, that part is true, but now they want to bury the history. They want us to believe we made it up. They want us to stop talking, but we won't, because even if they paved over the truth with concrete and pour water on top of it, we still remember, and as long as we remember, Oscarville lives. Every time you like, comment, or share, you help keep this story and other stories like it alive. Remember to subscribe for stories that they don't put in your textbooks. Peace.